Yo, what is up, YouTube? Crash Wilcox, and here we are in May of 2020, and we've just seen the release of Intel's 10th gen lineup of CPUs, some of which are capable of hitting, an incredible 5.4 gigahertz overclock. And along with that release of the 10th gen CPUs, we've seen the release of the new motherboards and the new chipsets, the Z490 chipset, and along with that, the LGA 1200 socket. So I thought with all these new releases, it would be a perfect time to get a new build put out. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Kind of the same build process that I normally do, introducing you to the parts and why I selected them, that sort of stuff. And we're going to be building all of that inside of this wonderful Be Quiet Pure Base 500 DX. So if you guys have never used a Be Quiet case before, I would highly recommend it. And I would say this might be the best case under $100 on the market today. And we'll go through that. So along with the product selection, we'll go through we talked about why we picked what we picked, some benchmarks, both synthetic and live gameplay and stuff like that, and then be back here to wrap it up with the final full build, so you guys can see what that looks like. If you want to see the actual step-by-step full build, that'll be over on my Patreon page. Please go check that out. I could use the support, but otherwise you'll have the unboxings and, like I talked about, the full build here with the benchmark. So with that being said, we'll jump into these parts. So like I talked about, everything new has just released. So wanted to throw this build together, and like any good build, the backbone of a computer is the CPU. So for this build, the CPU that we chose to go with was the Ryzen 7 3700X. You chumps thought I was going with Intel. Not today, my friends. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first reason, and probably the biggest reason, is I don't think we should let Intel off the hook yet. I know that they've released a 10th gen and they've made some improvements, but I don't think they've gone far enough. And I'm afraid that if we let them off the hook and the bandwagon comes back, Intel gets back into their comfort zone. And really, the whole reason the computer market has moved to where it has today is because of AMD. In the last 3 years, they have absolutely flipped the DIY computer market on its head. You look at the chart of Intel's premium CPUs from basically like 2008 to 2017 or whatever. They were like i7s, 4-core, 8-thread, refresh. And then 2017 hit, and they had the i7 7700K. You could overclock it to 5 gigahertz. It was crazy, right? 4-core, 8-thread. And then the Ryzen 7 released, 1700, 8-core, 16-thread, completely turned the CPU market upside down. And ever since then, Intel has been in catch-up mode. And I still think that stands today. I know the 10th gen's released. They have the i9 10900K, 10-core, 20-thread. I still think it pales in comparison to the Ryzen 9 lineup of CPUs. And Ryzen 4000 is just around the corner by the end of the year. And if what Ryzen has done up to this point, or AMD has done up to this point, Ryzen 4000 series CPUs, I can't imagine going to be anything less. They're going to, I imagine, if they keep on this pace, it's going to be incredible. So that's the main reason why I went with it. The second reason is the AM platform, or the AM4 platform, still has a lot of good room ahead of it. Like I talked about, the Ryzen 4000 series CPUs are coming out. Those are going to be compatible with the X570, and they just released news on the B550 motherboard, so you'll be able to put 3000 series and the 4000 series on there. So you still got some room to grow. But also, Intel's 10th gen lineup of CPUs don't even include PCIe Gen 4 support. So you can't even get a Gen 4 or SSD, which isn't that big of a deal, but AMD's had that for going on a year now. Intel's just releasing their stuff, still haven't included that. It apparently is included in the Z490 chipset, but the 10th gen CPUs don't work with Gen 4. So kind of a weird situation that you find yourself in there. And it's not a necessary thing. Gen 4 SSDs and all that aren't really that revolutionary right now, but just one of those that kind of head scratchers, right? So that's why those are the two reasons why we went with it. There's still room to grow on the AM4 platform. And I think the Ryzen 4000 series, if they keep on the same track they've been on, should be incredible. Ryzen has essentially made the high-end desktop platform a thing of the past. I mean, I know that there's still some benefits, PCIe lanes and that sort of thing, but really for 99.9% of everybody in the world that needs really a high-end desktop, let me introduce you to Ryzen. This is what it is. I mean, this used to be the high end, the 8-core, 16-thread. This is middle of the road now. And they own the low end with the 1600 AF. And then now the release of the 3100 and 3300X Ryzen 3 CPUs. They own that low end. The mid-range with the Ryzen 5 3600 series. Intel, I mean, I guess they're going to have some competitive products. But again, don't let them get comfortable again. Don't go crawling back to them. Keep the pressure on them. Make Intel prove that they're looking to further this technology rather than just sitting back, being fat and comfortable. So I'm happy with this 3700X, 8-core, 16-thread. It's wonderful. All right, what's next? So with that, we will be putting that on this beautiful MSI Meg X570 Unify. Let's see where we can fit all this in. This is an amazing motherboard. MSI does not have a lot of great X570 motherboards, but this is sort of the refresh, I believe, of like the Gaming Pro Carbon. They decided to actually go back to the table and do this right. Some of the best thermals that you're going to find on an X570 motherboard. And just all around, if you're not into RGB, no RGB, solid black, beautiful, great power delivery, great VRMs. I think it has 3 M.2 slots and everything that you could want in a motherboard. Integrated I/O shield, just wonderful. So that's what we chose to go with here. And again, with the room that the AM4 still has to grow, you could comfortably throw a 3950X on this, or anything I would imagine that the 4000 series is going to throw at you. Should work perfectly fine on this motherboard with no issues. So with that, we should get the ugly out of the way first. So I did go with a 2 terabyte Seagate Barracuda SSD. We'll just set that over here. Who cares? It's 2 terabytes of storage. Here's the thing. As of May 2020, probably the most expensive or biggest increase in price, not most expensive, and hardest things to get is SSDs and power supplies. The prices have seemed to go up quite drastically, and the availability is pretty scarce. So apparently everybody during this stay-at-home order has decided, let's just hoard power supplies and hard drives. So maybe 6 months ago, you could have found some reasonably priced SSDs. I remember buying Intel 660Ps for $85 for a terabyte. I mean, it was crazy. So $50 for 2 terabytes of mechanical storage. It'll do the job as a sort of internal backup. So that's why we went with it. Next, we'll go with the power supply. So as I talked about, they are getting a little difficult to get. So I don't want to spend, $170 on a power supply. I don't think that's necessary for really most anybody's computer. So I went with a Cougar don't even know what the hell it's called, 700 watt, 80 plus bronze, fully modular power supply. Semi-modular power supply. So I'm a little iffy on this, but I've used power supplies in the past that I wasn't, it's not the biggest name brand. Cougar is a name brand. They're not, completely out of nowhere, but it's a lesser name brand. So, it gives me a little hesitation, but I'm going to use it. It had some decent reviews, and if it sucks, we'll replace it. But, 700 watts is plenty of power. I'm not going to really have to look at it, so I don't really care what it looks like. And as long as it works, I'm happy. So that's what we went with there. And then next up, we'll get the rest of the hard drives out of the way. So for this, we decided to go with 2 NVMe drives. So we're going to be using the 1 terabyte Western Digital Black as our boot drive. And then we're going to be using the 500 gigabyte Western Digital Blue SN550. They're both NVMe drives. We're going to be using this as sort of our main game storage. So the 1 or 2 games that I play the most will be loaded up on this. Plus also like video editing, throw some stuff on here. And then we can move everything over to the hard drive once we're done. But this will make sure, like I talked about, it's hard to find a lot of inexpensive SSDs. I did pick this up for $150 at Office Depot, but I price matched it off Amazon, so got it for $150, which isn't unreasonable. I still think that's generally a pretty good price for a Western Digital Black. And then for the Blue, I believe I got it for $70. So not amazing deals, but not terribly outrageous pricing either. And that gives me 1.5 terabytes of NVMe storage. Make sure my operating system is running fast. So, you can't build a computer nowadays and not have an SSD of some sort. And I would highly recommend an M.2. It's just, you can find them. You don't necessarily need that much storage, but at the very least, a 256 gig boot drive. And then you can throw in maybe one of the 2 terabyte Barracuda drives. Now you're looking at maybe $100, and you've got all your hard drives taken care of, and your computer's running fast and snappy. So this might be overkill for most people, but like I said, I want to have some room to grow on this computer, and this will make sure that we have that. So next thing that we got, right here. So for our RAM, I'm going with 32 gigs of Patriot Viper DDR4 4000. So this is going to be some crazy fast RAM. Not the fastest RAM on the planet, but quite fast. So this should make sure, again, that we're running everything very, very quick. And 32 gigs, make sure that RAM is not going to be a limitation now or in the future. I've talked about this before. When we get to the benchmarks, you'll see some of this stuff that, games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare, for example, and I think even like the Division 2, if I'm not incorrect, those things are already using like 12 to 14 gigs of RAM. So if your goal is to maybe stream Call of Duty or something like that, and you only have 16 gigs of RAM, that's going to could potentially be a limitation for you. So 32 gigs, you don't obviously have to go into 4000s, but if you get 32 gigs of 3200 megahertz, you can get that for around $150. So that's something I would say, I guess, if you're building computers, things that you don't really want to skimp on. CPU, like I talked about, motherboard, those are things that are kind of hard to replace. But, RAM, you see builds sometimes and people are like, oh man, I'm going to get, 16 gigs and it's like DDR4 2400 or something like that. It's not going to be the biggest deal, but like, why, man? It's not terribly expensive if you can swing it. Like I said, maybe cut some corners somewhere else. Maybe get a less expensive case. This is a beautiful case, but you could have gotten, maybe an NZXT H510 or something for $70 there. You save $30, throw that here, maybe step up to a slightly better CPU or something like that, slightly better motherboard, whatever happens to be. But those are the things I think that you should consider when you're building, or even going to the used market, man. If you got a really restrictive budget, I bought this open box on Amazon. So it's originally a $300 motherboard, got it for $260. So saved myself $40 there. The power supply, I mean, you can find some used power supplies on Mercari.com. Go check out my video. I'll have it right here and then down in the description on how you should buy a PC in 2020. Granted, I didn't follow that to a T, but you can find used power supplies, used RAM, and the whole Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining thing isn't really a concern anymore. And I wouldn't lose sleep over buying a used part if, cryptocurrency is something concerned about. It's not a thing. Really buy the stuff, save yourself some money, spread that money around, step up to maybe a slightly better SSD, whatever happens to be. But don't skimp on the RAM. Go for 32 gigs if you can swing it. It will definitely pay out, I think, in the long run. So then next up, we are going to be using the Deepcool. I don't even know where to put this anymore. We're just going to put it here. The Deepcool Captain 240X. I believe this is like RGB. Maybe not. I don't know. Anywho, 240 millimeter AIO. And the reason we went with this, kind of two reasons, I guess. Well, really one main reason. So the 3700X is not a hot running CPU at all. You don't really overclock Ryzen CPUs. I know that they all come unlocked and overclockable, but they don't give you a lot of headroom to overclock. So I personally will just run a Ryzen CPU with Precision Boost Overdrive on and then let it do its thing. And so it's not a very hot running card. So this is largely overkill for a Ryzen 7 3700X. The included Wraith Prism cooler, all you need. And again, if you're tight on a budget, don't buy a cooler. The included cooler works just fine. Save up your money, spend it somewhere else. But this gives us room to grow, like I talked about. So if in the event I decided to, down the road, throw in a 3900, 3950, or whatever the 4000 series comes out with, this will work on that, keep it running nice and cool. But then also the reason for this PureBase 500 DX comes with 3 included 140 millimeter, I believe they're PureWings 2 fans. So it gives you one on the front, one on the top, and then one in the rear for the exhaust. So my thought process with this was, if I went with a AIO radiator and 2 fans, I could take the fan from the top or the front, whichever way I decide to mount this, and then move this fan that's included up here to the front or whatever, and then stick this on the top. Now you have 2 front fans, 2 top fans, and an included fan. That way, all the fans are taken care of. I'm kind of a completionist, I guess, in that I don't like seeing empty space where fans could sit and there's no fans. Although it largely doesn't matter. Let me say that. Again, if you're on a strict budget, having 3 or 4 fans in your case really does not make a big difference. And if I can find the video, I'll have it linked in the description. But I think on Linus's channel or whatever, it wasn't Linus, it was one of the other guys, did a video on fan placement and how it affected your thermals. And largely, as long as you have 1 fan for intake and 1 fan for exhaust, it largely doesn't matter anything else. All the additional fans may decrease your temperatures by a degree or 2, but it's really inconsequential. If you have a good CPU cooler and you got 1 fan for intake, 1 for exhaust, that's really all you need. So anything else just makes you feel better, or if you want RGB, whatever happens to be, but it does not really increase the performance of your computer that much. So all that being said, I picked this because I wanted it, so screw you. That's why I got it. And it will give me room to grow. This CPU is going to run nice and cool, and my fans will not make me freak out and feel OCD. So that's why I did it. And then the last thing, for the graphics card, we went with the ASRock Taichi 5700 XT. So a couple reasons for this. Number one, it's really nice looking. I do think of all the 5700 XT cards on the market, this is, if you care about looks, this is by far, in my opinion, which is completely subjective, the prettiest X570 graphics card, or RX 570 graphics card on the market. And it comes factory overclocked, which is nice. So also the price was right. You know, for this build, I really wanted to go in the realm of the RTX cards, like a 2070 Super, but it's just not easy to find a fairly inexpensive 5700X or a 2700 2070 Super, my God. And for the price to performance, this will perform very similar in many respects to a 2070 Super, even 2080 in some games and some things. Now it does lack the ray tracing support, but largely that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't really, I don't play Minecraft, which is really the only game I've ever noticed a drastic difference in ray tracing on. So if you play Minecraft, get an RTX card, but just go with an RTX 2060. It'll give you the ray tracing. It'll save yourself some money. But the performance, this thing is one of the better performing 5700 XT cards. And I got it for a fairly decent deal. I mean, it's been around the $430 to $450 range for this card, and I got it for just over $415. It is open box again, so save myself some money there. But that's kind of why we chose it: price to performance, and then also it just looks nice, and I like to have things that look nice. So that's the build, man. We're going to go ahead and start getting these boxes opened up, have these open box kind of videos for you guys, and then I'm going to throw this thing together, run through some benchmarks, and then come back at the end with the final build. But before we get to the opening of these boxes, if you could take just 1 second, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It certainly helps, and I really appreciate it. And then drop a comment if you want. I don't necessarily respond to all of them, but I will absolutely read them all. I promise you that. So that's all I got to say there. Let's go ahead and get these things torn open. right, so that's a wrap. Gonna hit you guys with a few still shots right now just so you can get a closer look at some of the components and the full build guide. But hope you guys enjoyed it. If you do want to check out that full build and other full builds that I have, please go to my Patreon site. $2 a month get you access there, and more importantly than the full build guides and stuff is just supporting a small time YouTuber trying to grow his channel. I would certainly appreciate it. But the build came together beautifully. I think it looks really nice. It's not too over the top RGB, but just enough to keep it looking good. And it's whisper quiet, just like everything Be Quiet makes. It's a fantastic case to build in. Runs really quiet. And more importantly, as you saw in some of those benchmarks, hitting well over 120 FPS in COD. Card ran cool. The CPU was in the 60-degree range. GPU, I don't think really even hit over 80. That's fantastic. And then in SnowRunner, which if you haven't played, is a wonderfully maddening game. It will drive you crazy, but you'll have a good time doing it, so I recommend that. But hitting 100 FPS in that game as well is pretty good. And then, as you just saw in that slide, the card with just Precision Boost Overdrive enabled was hitting over 4.4 gigahertz, boosting above that, so that's above its rated speed. So it just performed wonderfully. So there it is, man. That's the build. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please leave a comment if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless.